Hello, everyone. My name is Vesna from MDPI, and I will be your host today. Thank you for joining MDPI World Cities Day 2025. MDPI is a pioneer in scholarly open access publishing. MDPI has supported academic communities since 1996. Based in Basel, Switzerland, MDPI has the mission to foster open scientific exchange in all forms across all disciplines. Our 491 diverse and open access journals, including 482 peer-reviewed journals and 9 conference journals, are supported by more than 150,000 academic experts who share our mission, values, and commitment to providing high-quality services for our authors. Journals involved in the organization of this webinar are construction materials, vehicles, smart cities, automation, applied sciences, climate, remote sensing, atmosphere, meteorology, and world. All journals are an international peer review and open access published online by MDPI. On this slide, we can find today's timetable. Today, we will have 4 presentations. Each presentation will be 20 minutes. The presentation will be followed by question and answer part. On this slide, we can also find relevant special issue, which correlates to the topic of the webinar. If you're interested in submitting your research to a special issue that is linked to this topic, please visit the web page for more information. If you have any questions for our speakers, please post them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen anytime during the webinar. Please remember to add the name of the person to whom you are addressing your question. As the participants of this webinar, you will be able to download electronic certificate of attendance by accessing your dashboard on the SciForum platform. After the webinar. Certificates can be found under the tab My Certificates. Today we have 4 speakers. The first speaker is Professor Wang from University of Oklahoma, United States. The second speaker will be Professor Javier Fernando from Toronto Metropolitan University from Canada. The third speaker will be Professor Patrick Hung from Ontario Tech University, also from Canada, and Professor Sue Mint from American Association of Geographers, Ecological Society of America, and American Geopolitical Union. Dear Professor Wang, I'm giving a word to you.
Thank you for the introduction and also for inviting me. And so my talk today is about resolving complexity in urban climate modeling. Although my presentation focuses on physics-based and perhaps process-oriented modeling, what I really hope to do today is to showcase how these approaches can actually complement AI and people-centered approaches. And by understanding how we model cities like radiation exchange, heat, and moisture exchanges, we can better identify what kind of data are still missing and the kind of data that smart cities and new sensing technologies can really start to generate. So for most of us, urban is a norm. We now have more than half of the population living in cities, right? As you can see from this map from UN's population division, for more developed countries such as the US and Japan, urban population can be over 80 or even 90%. And this is also why we are celebrating the World Cities today. So this global urbanization is one of the greatest planetary changes we are seeing today, and it is also expected to continue in the future. However, this process also drastically reshaped our surrounding environment, and the construction materials we're using, the change in land cover composition, the heterogeneous structure of buildings, and also the emissions from various anthropogenic activities are all changing our atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, and even biosphere. And all these changes are also making our cities vulnerable when we are facing climate and weather extremes. We have seen how deadly heat waves, flooding events, and frequent air pollution episodes can negatively influence our lives and health. Even worse, the climate is actually projected to be warmer in the future. According to IPCC's sixth assessment report, under all five shared social economic pathways, or so-called SST scenarios, the warming is projected to continue at least until mid-21st century. And as a result, this warming trend will likely increase the frequency, duration, and intensity of many extreme events, especially heat waves. And this will likely put extra pressure on urban dwellers and urban infrastructure in our cities. And it is so pressing for us to better understand the urban climate, and proactively cope with these adverse impacts. So most of our work so far has been focused on solving this challenge, and we use physics-based models and also data-driven approaches to understand and predict the couple dynamics of urban environments, urban systems, with regional climate and broadly the Earth system. So when we are talking about modeling the urban environment and its climate, it might sound quite challenging because the real cities are so complex with buildings, roads, vegetation, and a bunch of other features. But the cities can actually be approximated in a fairly concise way. The most common geometry of cities include the road, the sky above everything, and two nearby buildings facing each other with walls and roofs. This geometry has been commonly used in a family of urban land surface models, or urban climate models, if you will, which we call urban canopy model. So over the past decade, we have been developing a single-layer urban canopy model. We named this model Arizona State University Single-Layer Urban Canopy Model, or as LUM for short. LUM is like illumination. And Arizona State University is actually where I got my PhD degree. So the first generation of this model only had features like heat exchange within the urban canopy layer, the subsurface heterogeneity, which means we can use different materials over the same surface, and some very basic hydrological processes like evapotranspiration and infiltration. In comparison, the second generation focuses more on the interactions between human and environment, and it includes a green roof module, an improved ground vegetation module, and also some other new modules to simulate, for example, urban irrigation, anthropogenic heat emissions, and urban oasis effect, which basically represents the enhanced evaporation from a wet surface surrounded by dry surface. One example is that we have an urban park in a densely built urban neighborhood. These new modules have enabled more realistic evaluation of some urban heat mitigation and adaptation strategies, such as green roofs or green space irrigation. So to further improve this model, we developed the third generation, which now includes explicit representation of urban trees and also their various biophysical processes like shading, evapotranspiration, root water uptake, and other features. We also developed new radiation modules to resolve the radiative exchanges between a tree canopy and the surrounding buildings. We have also developed other new modules to further refine the representation of human activities, such as the building energy use, and moisture emissions, and also pedestrian thermal comfort. And as you can see from this illustration, these two plots basically show how we resolve these new processes. And as you can see, all of our past efforts and all these new modules are to better represent different processes and eventually make our model closer to the complex reality in cities. So one of the benefits of adding new features into urban climate models is that they are expected to further improve model performance in climate and also hydrometeorological modeling. Here is one example of model evaluation using an in-situ measurement in Switzerland during the famous basalt urban boundary layer experiment, which is also where MDPI headquarters is located. So we are comparing two simulations. One is with urban trees, one without, and you can clearly tell that from these two comparison figures that adding trees into our model can really close the large gaps between observation and simulation for both sensible heat flux and latent heat flux. And basically the two most important turbulent heat fluxes that are shaping our urban environment. And you can also tell this from the table here, which shows the mean bias error comparison. Our models have been included in the second global urban land surface model intercomparison project, or so-called Urban Plumber, which was led by UK's Met Office and University of Reading, also in UK. This kind of model intercomparison is so important because it can help model developers understand the strengths and limitations of their models and eventually benefit future development to make their models more similar to the real world. So this project involves 30 urban land surface models with different levels of complexity. Phase one of this project focuses on a long-term single site evaluation using observations from a site in Melbourne, Australia. And phase two involves 20 global sites. And the simulations completed about 3 years ago, and the results of phase one have already been published last year. And similar to the first intercomparison project, the second project also found models with intermediate complexity tend to perform better than more complex ones and simpler ones. A very interesting finding from this project is that it also evaluated the water balance representation in 19 urban land surface models at all global sites. And the map here basically shows the locations of 20 cities across different climate regions where we did our evaluation. And surprisingly, almost half of the simulations don't really have a close to surface water balance, including our models. So in plain language, the amount of water going into the urban system, which is usually just the rainfall, and water goes out of the system, doesn't really fully add up. And some parts of the water cycle are either missing or not correctly considered in our models. So this figure shows the water balance closure for different models. Only the dots within these horizontal shaded bands are considered closure. So we really have some very wild model outputs. And this actually reveals a significant issue because some of these models have already been applied to categorize urban climate and even used to evaluate the potential benefits of green infrastructure in, for example, stormwater management. And this might lead to some large uncertainties or even biases when we are using them. So we decided to further improve the representation of hydrological processes in urban climate models. We have actually incorporated various hydrological parameterization schemes or hydrological models into our model the version 3.1. And this is an approach we call multi-parameterization. And the augmented version is now called Azlum Hydro, just to emphasize the hydro focus. And the development of this model was actually led by Yuqi Huang, a PhD student in my group. And this new version focuses on canopy interception, and canopy re-evaporation, surface and subsurface runoff processes, and improved soil moisture dynamics. And these are built upon the model's existing capabilities of simulating root wall uptake and evapotranspiration. And here are just some schematics for key functions used in the 6 schemes for surface runoff. So the first thing we want to verify is whether these new schemes have big impacts on surface energy flux modeling, because that can directly impact urban climate. I know this is a very dense plot, but what I are seeing here is a summary of mean bias error on the top and root mean square error on the bottom for 4 essential surface energy fluxes across global cities. And from left to right, we have sensible heat flux, latent heat flux, net short wave, and net long wave radiation. So values closer to 0 means better results. So our model performs reasonably well in predicting these fluxes across diverse climatic and urban settings. And so surprisingly, the simulated energy fluxes were generally insensitive to the choice of hydrological scheme. This actually confirms the observations from the model intercomparison project I just mentioned. So urban land surface model can still produce some good estimations of surface energy fluxes, even though they might be terrible at modeling hydrological processes. But there's one exception. The ETOP model scheme seems to produce lower sensible heat flux and higher latent heat flux at some sites than other schemes, which might be due to its groundwater module. We then also checked the differences in surface water partitioning among different schemes. All the simulations were initialized with a 10-year spin-up, so we should have a nearly equilibrium soil state at the beginning of each simulation. Well, first, all 6 schemes have virtually closed the surface water balance, which is great. But we do see some discrepancies for specific terms at some sites, like surface runoff at a Korean site, and tree evapotranspiration at Baltimore, US, and also in Sunset site in Canada. And if you ever zoom into individual events, the discrepancies are even larger. So using different hydrological schemes indeed has a non-negligible impact on hydrological process modeling, which we should bear in mind in the future. The development of urban climate models can not only improve our characterization of urban climate processes and improve model performance, but they can also improve the process-based understanding of different urban climate solutions. And this is really needed given the environmental challenges we're facing in the city, in our cities. So the newest version of our model is capable of simulating different nature-based solutions such as green roofs, trees, green space irrigation, and lawn, but also engineered solutions like reflective pavements and white roofs. We have also coupled our model with large-scale land surface model and weather research and forecasting model to enable modeling across different scales, ranging from neighborhood scale to city scale and all the way to regional and continental scale. So using our model, we can answer many urban questions that cannot be easily solved based on purely observations or remote sensing alone. And this slide is one example of our recent sub-city scale modeling in Brooklyn Borough in New York City in the US. With our model, we were able to run controlled experiments and answer questions like, what are the cooling effects of existing urban trees? So this map shows the change in wet bulb temperature between the real situation and the controlled case, where we basically removed all existing urban trees. And wet bulb temperature, just as you know, is a widely used heat stress metric. It considers both temperature and humidity. And so apparently trees provide some robust cooling effect, but this cooling effect is not the same everywhere. So if you ever take a closer look, apparently, neighborhoods with dense tree canopy benefit more from tree than those with only few trees. And we also see some very slight warming effect for parks after considering trees. And this is mainly because trees can block the outgoing long-wave radiation from the grass and eventually weaken the cooling effect. And this is something we have recently observed in our field experiment. And as you can see from the infrared image here, the bottom of the tree canopy actually gets quite warm near sunset. We have also coupled our model with mesoscale models like weather research and forecasting model or WRF model. Here is an example of a regional scale simulation in which we were trying to quantify the cooling effect of green space irrigation in cities and also its potential trade-off with water demand across the US. And as you can imagine, irrigation reduces temperature, but it also means actual water consumption. So this map shows the 2-meter air temperature change after applying irrigation in all cities across the entire country. And with different background climate, of course, the cooling effect also varies. But what is really interesting is that we actually also see some cooling effect in the downwind area of cities where no urban irrigation is applied. So this cooling effect is actually adapted by wind. We saw this spillover effect in most cities, especially in Northern California and Texas Triangle. This is Dallas and Northeast Corridor, the densely built belt in the US, and something we could leverage for regional heat mitigation and adaptation planning. Even though our model appears to be much more advanced than the previous versions of single-layer urban canopy models, the hydrological processes are still oversimplified. If you ever think about the real urban environment where we have pipeline networks, interactions with lakes and rivers, interactions between natural and impervious surfaces, even different forms of green infrastructure. It's beyond just the urban trees, lawns, and parks, and the impact of human interventions like management. Apparently, there's still a long way to go, and in an opinion piece we published earlier this year, we highlighted that proper handshakes between urban climate models and urban hydrological models are really needed. We also need more ground truth data about water usage that we can really validate these physics-based models. Well, hydrological processes are only one piece that has been oversimplified in urban climate models. There are unfortunately much more. In our recent paper on ultra-fine resolution urban climate modeling, we identify several aspects that we should further improve for urban climate models. These include, for example, dynamic anthropogenic heat modeling, improved building energy modeling to reflect the heterogeneity between buildings, and also dynamic pollution emission modeling in response to human activities, and improved urban geometry representation, underground infrastructure, and some novel mitigation strategies like renewable energy systems and even adaptive sensing technologies. And most of these have been limited by the lack of ground truth data for validation. But with the development of Internet of Things and other sensing technologies, we have started tackling some of these limitations to some extent. For example, for this heterogeneous building energy modeling, thanks to data gathered by smart meters, we were able to develop the first city-scale building energy modeling framework for the entire US. And here is just a glance of our results from our energy modeling framework, in which we quantified the response of cooling and space heating to city level temperature change using millions of simulations. And you can learn more about our approach in this paper. Here we use a metric called energy use intensity, or EUI. Basically, it's energy consumption divided by floor area. We found that on average, site electricity EUI for cooling rises by 14% for each 1 degree local warming, while for space heating, the average reduction for fossil fuel energy use intensity ranges from 9% to 11%, basically ranging around 10%. So our confidence about this work comes from the validation against the metered data. So these linear responses we quantified here can really enable some convenient energy-related cost-effectiveness analysis for heat mitigation strategies in cities. For example, if the cooling effect of a specific measure, say urban trees, is 1 degree at the city scale, we can use our results here to quickly get a first-order estimation of the change in energy demand. So there are also many emerging opportunities. One great thing is that we have many new high-resolution urban parameter datasets at both regional and global scales. Most are based on machine learning approaches. Here are just 3 examples. Some have already been used in physics-based modeling. There are also many coordinated efforts going on between modeling and observation, like the Urbisphere project in Europe and Urban Integrated Field Lab projects in the US. These coordinated efforts are really important because they enable targeted model validation and also measurements, and can really help our process representation in modeling. And last but not least, the use of machine learning in climate modeling is rapidly expanding, but I would say its application to urban climate studies is still in its early stages. There are still a lot of possibilities for future innovation. So I'd like to end my talk with this illustration. We've talked a lot about processes, models, and numerical simulations. But at the end of the day, it's really about how these tools can help people and cities adapt, grow, and eventually thrive. And as digital technologies, AI, and data-driven decision-making are reshaping how cities are designed, managed, and experienced, physics-based models still provide the foundation. They give us the physics understanding needed to interpret, to guide, and to eventually directly train, even directly train data-driven approaches. So in my opinion, it's not about choosing between physics-based or data-driven approaches. It's really about connecting them. When we combine physics understanding with human-centered innovation, we can truly build cities that are not just smarter, but also more sustainable, resilient, and livable for everyone. And I will stop here. And if you want to learn more about our research, you can scan this QR code, which will take you to our lab website. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wang, for your presentation. The next presenter is Professor Javier Fernando.
Hello, everyone. My name is Xavier Fernando. I'm from Toronto Metropolitan University. So today I'm going to talk about vehicular communications and how it can help with smart transportation as well as energy sustainability. So this is the outline of my talk. Uh, so first, I'm going to review some of the emerging technologies for vehicular communication and vehicular connectivity. And then this includes different standards, optical wireless, different technologies, and aerial terrestrial networks. Then I am going to talk about applications of connected vehicles, how these vehicles can actually help us to realize intelligent transportation for efficient and safe transportation, and also how it can help autonomous maneuvering of vehicles. And then I'm going to talk how these connected vehicles can actually help with the smart grid and integration of renewable energies into smart grids, because that's a new area. Not many people are working on that. So if you look at a modern vehicle, and it is much more intelligent than old vehicles. Sometimes even it's more intelligent than us. It has so many sensors. It has very powerful computers inside, and lots of information processing is happening. And it has so many sensors and Internet of Things. It itself is like a mini Internet of Things system. And also it communicates with the external world, then it becomes a hub communicating with the external world. So it has so many sensors. And say some research, Juniper research identified, say by 2030, about 95% of all vehicles will be connected vehicles. Somehow they will be communicating with the infrastructure or other vehicles or traffic lights or with pedestrians. All these communications are happening now, slowly being implemented in these vehicles. Yeah. So if you look at a modern vehicle, it's basically like a communication hub. It can consider informations like control center, customer support, emergency driving conditions, speed control, security system, etc., etc. All these things need to be communicated with the outside. Typically, it is called the V2X communication, and X stands for infrastructure, other vehicles, pedestrians, network, etc. Okay. So also, if you take a modern autonomous vehicle, a lot of time they have different types of sensors like camera, lidar, which is actually a light-based radar, and radar, GPS, ultrasonic sensors, video cameras, infrared cameras. All this information is collected, and it is processed using machine learning and AI algorithms in real time, ultra fast training and ultra fast processing, and it makes decisions on how to control the maneuvering, and the control happens in real time. And actually the vehicle to vehicle and vehicle to other infrastructure communication is also essential, although currently most autonomous vehicles, especially say for example if you look at Tesla autopilot or some other autonomous vehicles, they rely mostly on sensors. they are not widely using V2X communication. There are actually not technical but more business cases why they are not using V2X, because they want to rely on their own technology rather than relying on other things. But it is coming. It is slowly increasing, right? So let us quickly review what are the communication technologies that are available. Okay. Let me turn on the video. Actually. Yeah, sorry about that. So there are different communication technologies you can use. The most commonly used technology is the DSRC. It's called the Dedicated Short Range Communications, that essentially connects two vehicles, right? And also the vehicles can actually communicate with roadside unit, and it can use wide area networks, 5G or 4G LTE type networks to connect with the rest of the world. And most vehicles are equipped with OBUs, onboard units. So this onboard unit is basically the communication hub for the vehicle, and RSU is the infrastructure hub. Right? Okay, so let us quickly look at these different communication networks. The vehicular network can be basically divided into two categories. That is the cellular network based, say either 4G, 5G, or upcoming 6G cellular networks provide connectivity for vehicles. So when the cellular network gives connection, actually it allocates a channel, a dedicated channel for each vehicle. So there is no problem of actually having packet collisions or slow throughput. On the other hand, DSRC and some other versions of V2X communication are like ad hoc networks. They don't need a cellular base station. So they create their own network, and they use the widely known collision sensing and multiple access type protocol. So that means when two transmitters transmit simultaneously, there will be a packet collision. And then one of the transmitter has to actually uh, wait and then retransmit. So this is a typical approach that is used in our Wi-Fi networks, like typically known as 802.11ab. So this kind of technology is good because it's an ad hoc network. You don't need a base station or centralized infrastructure. But on the other hand, when number of vehicles increase, right, like in a congested area, in a downtown area, the throughput of DSRC type networks will really go down, because there will be too many people trying to communicate at the same time. We all know what happens to Wi-Fi systems when everyone try to connect to the network. The same thing can happen here as well, right? So, so here actually I have compared like three different networks: IEEE 802.11a, typical Wi-Fi network, and also 802.11p and 802.11bd. Those two are basically dedicated for vehicular ad hoc networks, VANETs, right? So the frequency band and the bandwidth, and basically what happens is 802.11p has limited data rate, say up to about 3 to 27 megabit per second, with about 10 millisecond latency. In contrast, 802.11bd, which is a newer version, has actually much higher data rate, up to 160 megabit per second, and it uses 20 megahertz bandwidth, uh, and it can go even up to 300 megabits per second if it is using a 40 megahertz bandwidth. So it has two different flavors, and its latency also less. Say it is less than 3 milliseconds. So that is the preferred system. So then let us look at the cellular V2X type networks. So the DSRC is an ad hoc network for VANET, but cellular V2X is the new standard. Actually, it is fast growing and fast being implemented. And this cellular V2X actually has two different flavors. The first flavor is called the PC5 interface. It is very similar to DSRC. It also uses short range connection with typically low latency and uh, without a infrastructure. It's ad hoc network. But it also offers the UU interface, which is more interesting. So this second mode communicates over the licensed cellular network band. So it's actually communicate using the cellular frequency bands. And it can connect to the network, and it can actually provide infotainment and cloud communications. And it is not very latency, I mean, it is not very fast. So it can actually transmit latency tolerant safety messages, right, concerning long range road hazards and traffic conditions. So higher latency, actually the UU interface gives higher latency up to 30 to 100 millisecond, which is in vehicular realms, it's too high actually to implement any safety real-time control applications. But it also enable edge computing and network orchestration. Right. So this is a comparison between the PC5 and UU network. Uh, Basically, PC5 is device-to-device communication, UU is device-to-network, and PC5 doesn't need a cellular network, but UU needs cellular network. Latency is very low with PC5, 5 to 10 millisecond, but UU is higher latency. And the range for PC5 is short to medium. And UU has higher, longer range safety messages, and platooning can be transmitted here, and cloud access can be handled there. Right? Okay. Now, these two technologies are basically being implemented, but also there is a new technology that is upcoming. It's the visible light communication. That means using light rays or optical wave to communicate between vehicles. The interest in VLC, visible light communication, emerged because a lot of modern vehicles are using LED lights as tail lights, headlights, right? So these LEDs can actually can be switched rapidly. So when they switch very fast, human eyes cannot see the flickering, but it can be used to transmit data, right? So some of the experimental systems have been implemented and tested, and this kind of communication can actually be used between, say, a traffic light and the vehicle. A traffic light, in addition to just giving the color code information, it can also tell the vehicle uh, some metadata, like how long you have to wait in this traffic light, and whether there is a traffic hazard somewhere around, and which is the best route, where is more congestion, right? So some kind of additional data can be given from a traffic light to the vehicle. And this kind of communication can work very well between two adjacent vehicles, because one vehicle is following the other one. Typically, we call this as platooning. So you actually have a very good visibility of the rear end of this vehicle all the time. So this rear end of this vehicle can actually transmit data. They can communicate with between each other, right? Because they are essentially they are kind of quasi-stationary with respect to each other. So they can communicate data, and even before the driver sees the red light and applies the brake, actually an autonomous vehicle can read the information from the vehicle before that, and it can actually start slowing down. Right? So nowadays a lot of RF based radar systems are used, but in the future the optical waves also can be used. And another interest in this application is actually most vehicles, they use some kind of image sensors. They have lots of video cameras, infrared cameras, right? So the image sensor in a vehicle can also be used as an optical receiver. Like it can actually have dual functionality, right? So these things make these things the visible light communication for vehicles is interesting, and this is an emerging technology. The issue with there are a few issues with visible light communication for vehicle applications. First of all, the outdoor environment, the ranges are long, right? So the optical communication works very well in short range, and also the channels change rapidly, right? So in the scenario I explained, like in the platooning scenario, maybe you can use, but when vehicles pass each other or they are orthogonal to each other, it's not easy to establish an optical wireless communication link. And the other big issue is actually high ambient noise from the sunlight or street lights. right? A lot of time in the bright sunlight, when there is bright sun, the light coming from the vehicles will experience high level of noise because of the sunlight. Right? In this case, actually detecting the information, decoding it can become very difficult. Right? And also, the LEDs used in the vehicles are actually high power LEDs. Typically, the LEDs used in for communication are low power LEDs in fiber optics, for example. When the LED size and power increases, uh, rapidly switching them also become a little bit more difficult. So that is another issue. And also there is a dimming issue, right? There's a dimming issue because when you switch a light, actually the average power goes down because it is on and off, right? So that's called the dimming effect. And also there is issues between using dedicated optical receivers versus image sensors, because image sensors are very sensitive to the light intensity, and when they receive information from an optical transmitter, for example, they might get saturated, like typical CMOS image sensors, right? But on the other hand, when they detect images, the light range has a certain dynamic range. They have certain high and low values. So all these things are limitation. The other limitation is actually if you are using light waves, we are talking a unipolar communication. That means you have only on and off. You don't have -1 in optical domain, right? So this makes directly using the RF techniques impossible in the optical domain, because you don't have -1 and +1, you have only 1 and 0. For example, if you want to use OFDM technology, OFDM gives you negative signal values as well. So you have to add a bias to make it positive. So those are the polarity issues. Okay. So actually, if you want more information, you can refer to this book, our recent release of this book, Vehicle Application of Visible Light Communication. So the idea is actually each of these technology has its pros and cons. So DSRC throughput drastically drops in congested situations in downtown areas. And cellular V2X gives a very good performance, but they require cellular network access. Sometimes outside the city, in remote areas, you may not have cellular connectivity. You need to have a 5G or LTE type base stations available. And also it's costly because you have to pay to the cellular operator in order to use their cellular network. You have to have subscription, right? And VLC, visible light communication, is still a baby. It's actually just started, and it has limited short range connectivity, and it requires line of sight connections. It cannot work behind obstructions or blockages, right? So how do we manage all this? So each of these has pros and cons. I believe in the future an appropriate combination of these technologies. Say, for example, right now the autonomous vehicles use a combination of a multitude of sensors. Likewise, they also have to use a combination of different technologies to get the communication, cellular wireless communication. So actually, this paper we recently published, we studied how actually incorporating VLC and DSRC can help alleviating a traffic congested situation quickly, because the DSRC get high blockage because more vehicles are crowded in an area. On the other hand, VLC can be actually used to transmit the information, but you have to use multi-hop VLC connection. So each vehicle connects with its neighboring vehicle using VLC, and the information is transmitted over that. So this graph shows actually with congestion management using VLC plus DSRC, the congestion is alleviated fairly fastly. It's common sense actually. If you can implement VLC, definitely it will help in these kind of scenarios. And then, sorry, I just want to check my time. Oh, I'm almost done with time. Okay. So I can stop if you want. Actually, I have a few more slides. Okay, I will just show this slide, last slide. Because, okay, now we talked about connectivity, and actually in the future, how I realize is this kind of connections should be used. The vehicular connectivity with the grid, which I didn't talk actually, it is also very important because the smart grid are nowadays incorporating renewable energy sources that are highly fluctuating. So the power grid operators are looking to store their energy. And electric vehicles have huge batteries, rechargeable batteries with them. So a connected electric vehicle to the grid can actually be used to store electricity, like grid to vehicle and vehicle to grid power transfer. A lot of people are researching in this area as well. And for this also you need to have communication, because what happens when there is excess power in the grid, you can store it in the vehicle, and when the grid needs more power, you can actually borrow it from the vehicle, because renewable sources like wind and solar are not stable. They fluctuate a lot. So the power grid operators also looking to use vehicles as temporary storage elements. So that is where the V2G, vehicle to grid, the power transfer can actually help, power transfer and communication, right? And also for electric vehicle, charging communication is needed, right? And then edge computing and caching, all these things need communication. So basically, if we are talking about sustainable cities, we need to have sensing, information fusion and processing, electrification of transportation, vehicular connectivity, and all these need to be helped with artificial intelligence and machine learning. Will definitely help with smart cities, smart and sustainable cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Javier, on your presentation. The next speaker is Professor Patrick Hung.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for to come this morning. And also appreciate my opportunity to present what my research team is working on about social robot. And first of all, is today I will tell you about some of our past projects we work on and also what we are doing now. So first of all is according to the social robot, right, in smart city, we always use a fundamental theory called the uncanny valley. So this theory was created by Professor Mori in Japan almost half century ago. He found out that human being like us, okay, what happens is when we see some machine, they have a humanoid form and they behave like human, or they look very adorable, and then somehow in that case we will emotionally engage into that robot. We don't think that would be a machine is our companion, our friends. But somehow, if the machine is too much like human, but not really like exactly like a human, it's unnatural. So what happened is we will drop into the valley. That's why you see the curve here, the green curve, and drop into the valley. And then your trust, your engagement would be just dropping down to the bottom, because you think that is a very creepy entity, like zombie. But what Professor Mori he proposes in the future one day in our society, smart city, like those AI movies, science fiction movie we watch in Hollywood. In the future one day, maybe in our society, there's no longer we are able to differentiate robot and human, and that's why in that case it's fine. So the curve will just go up. You think just the same, human and robot. That's what this curve represent. Professor Mori his theory of the uncanny valley. So that's why sometimes when you hear some news talking about uncanny valley effect, and that's why this is what the theory the media they refer to. Okay, so my team is we work on the social robots and see about we call the whole human robot interactions. And before that, we use a robot from ASUS company in Taiwan. So what happened? This robot is kind of like it's more like it's very simple. You just think about like IoT. Okay, what happened is you can tell the face is a tablet PC with a facial expression, has voice, has microphone, has some sensors, and somehow you can program the robot. And for example, what you see now from that video clips is the project we work with an NGO in Toronto, and then we put the robot and interact with the sick kids at home, the kids who got brain cancer at home, and see the kids' responses. So, and also even though beyond that is we also test the robot in different contexts, different cultural background. For example, we test the robot in the Abu Dhabi, Dubai, UAE, and see whether the people there they could accept the robot or not. And also about we set the robot in Brazil and see what the differences between the Brazilian and Canadian or North American. They preset to buy a robot at home. So this is what we did before, like before the pandemic. During the pandemic, we changed our focus to, I call it more like the zoomorphic robot, more like the robot like animal-like robot, because the reason is we find out that when we show the humanoid robot like that one I showed you before to many people, and I think because everyone of us we are being watched by Star Wars movies. We expect that when we see a robot like with humanoid form, we expect the robot is very smart. It's like very autonomous and intelligent. But of course, the situation up to this moment is not like that. It's more like IoT. I say IoT, you program it and then it work. Okay, but somehow you change the condition, change the environment, it may not work well, the robot. So, and because the expectation bar is very high, so that's why what did we do is we think about maybe we should use some robots. The appearance may not raise the expectation from the human, from the user we call. So what did we do is we changed to more like zoomorphic robot, more like animal-like robot. For example, like just like this is a guide dog robot, and somehow we for this good thing is because as a dog, people may not expect too much from a dog. So that's why this is what we changed our focus to zoomorphic robot. Okay, but due to the time limit, okay, I have to keep an eye on the time. So what happened is recently we since last year summer we start another research project about a project with the Korean with the Hongki University in Korea. And what happened is what we're doing now is we call a theomorphic robot. It's more than robot carry a religious icon. For example, like what you see here on this page about a Buddha robot, a Buddha, and some of this Buddha statue is from the Korean Museum. It's over 1,000 years old. What they call is a pensive Bodhisattva statue in Korea. And when you go the next time to Seoul, the city in Korea, you can see they put these two pensive Buddha statue in a special room, and to special room to demonstrate about this part of they call it Three Kingdom history in Korea, and also about the background why at the time people they made this kind of pensive Buddha. So what happened is, in fact, the museum in Korea, National Museum in Korea, they do have a app to promote these two statues in the museum, and you can see here. Besides, they want to promote these two statues, but of course behind that they want to also promote the K culture, Korean culture, as well as the Buddhism. What happened is you can see they have a unique metaverse. I'll call them a virtual reality app, and somehow you can download it and then you can put on your head-mount device. You can try and technically the concept is very simple. I'll say very simple. It's just inside. You try to collect flowers and other diamonds and go to worship the Buddha. Up to some points, you can meditate with the Buddha. So this is very straightforward, simple application. I would say that, but just for fun. I don't think they don't build this one for some serious mental wellness purposes. They just made it for fun and to promote the statue. But the research question is they would look for the second version of this app. What else could they do? So that's why, and that's why we work with the Hongki University, with the National Museum of Korea. We talk about what should we do next step. And first of all, it's about, okay, now, because they already have this metaverse, it's for meditation. It's like a game. And then we think about maybe we have to look into the mental wellness literature, and we find a lot of this kind of apps virtual reality app about the mental wellness. I'll show some papers here. And also we look into about, okay, what happened if we made the statue to be a robot, and then somehow maybe more like you provide more like augmented reality environment for people to do meditation with the Buddha. And then we look into this literature called theomorphic robots, and we find a lot of interesting projects, especially in Europe. And you know what I mean? And they make different kind of theomorphic robot and evaluate the effect to the people. Okay. So that's why we say, okay, now good. Okay, let's try this one. What happens if we have an app like this, something like this? It's a virtual reality environment, but somehow you see the Buddha inside in the center is a physical robot. In the background, virtual, but the robot, I mean, the statue is physical. Even though the tiger, for example, the tiger there is also a robot. And some of the tiger may approach me and rub my leg and touch me, something like that, and give me some haptic feedback. Because of this, we start prototyping the robot, and this is what we 3D scan the statue, and then we got a 3D model. And somehow this is what a small prototype we demonstrate and test about the degree of freedom and what kind of freedom, what kind of motion the robot may be able to do. And for example, this one we're testing about, for example, like with the hatch, this is a 1:1 ratio to the original statue, and ask the statue to follow a red dog. You see this is what. And of course, you can see a camera that is about computer vision. And I think what we consider is, okay, during the augmented reality app, okay, or mixed reality app, when the user, right, interact with the Buddha, the robot, and what kind of interaction? Should we do a verbal or non-verbal interaction? In this case, we tend to use the non-verbal interaction, not by speech, because first of all, we don't know how large is the vocabulary, how large is what kind of context to talk to the robot from the human. Secondly, is we don't want to we don't want to have too much. We don't want to have people to say something inappropriate to the robot in this environment, because it's more like that is a icon of a national treasury in Korea. So, and then what happened is, that's why we select to use the hand gesture and in Buddhism or Hinduism, it's called mudras. And then somehow the robot will show you the hand gesture and express some meaning to you as well. And you may do the same thing. So this is what something like this. This is the prototype. The proof of concept prototype we made in the very beginning, about maybe behind you have some test instructions. Okay, and somehow you use as a user in the VR world, I use my hand to express some meaning by hand gestures in this environment. Okay, move on. And of course, this project is not completed yet. We still have another 1 year to go. And what we're doing now is we're thinking about how to make the entire the workflow of this story. So, and what happened is we also think about what would be the scenario look like, right? So we think about something. This is only a proof of concept demo. We think of something like this, and then inside the augmented reality world, and somehow you go inside, and then you see some instructions. Maybe you have an AI voice as well, AI voice narrator beside you and tell you what you should do or what you should not do. Okay, and then what happened is, and then somehow give you some instructions, visual instructions, and then somehow the Buddha may just come from the galaxy universe, and then you interact with the Buddha. But this time, this avatar would be the robot. What that means is you can see the physical robot, but the background, they're all virtual. This is what we are trying that now by another technology called AI glasses, not by this we call it head-mount device, because we think a lot of limitation about head-mount devices, about this virtual reality application. So we are using the AI glasses, testing that now. Okay, so in fact, we demonstrate the draft, the basic idea to the public in I think in June, this year, in the OCAD University in Toronto, in the Great Hall of the Public. And what you see here is some picture about the public. They came into our booth in the exhibition hall, and then somehow we first of all we invite them to go into the virtual world and experience about that first, and then after that they could go and enter these little partitions, and then interact with the robot. This is what some picture and show you what we do. And of course, during that, we asked the participant to fill up some questionnaire for us. And there are some standardized questionnaire in this area. Okay, like Godspeed questionnaire to test about people how they react to the robot, and simulator sickness about the application virtual reality, what they feel, and SUS as well. So eventually, we find interesting thing is I don't care about details here. Our interesting thing is about no matter what kind of background the participant is from. I based on that limited experiment or limited number of participants, we found out that is most of those participants, they could perceive the Buddha statue, the robot, as an icon of intelligence. So and nobody say they have a strong opposition to this kind of icon, as they think about it's only a medication, only a show a like for mental wellness, show a way of living. So yeah, and of course we are still working on it, and behind can tell a lot of AI technology behind the entire story. And we call it, and then of course this day you may have heard about the concept of large behavior model proposed by the MIT, the Toyota Research Lab Institute. And however, I call my students saying we do a small behavior model, not large. We all start from something small. We don't have that resources to build large thing. Start from small thing. Okay, so future work is of course, as even though this is more like a research work, more like for just show about the technology, right? About the social robot and the augmented reality application. But however, because this is carry an icon, more or less is a national treasury over there in Korea. So that's why we also consult with some of the experts in this area from the religious studies about how to stay saving, what kind of function or what kind of scenario we should do or we should not do. Okay, I think that's all from my talk, and thank you very much. And if you have any question, you can ask me or you can send me an email. And thank you very much. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Hong, for your presentation. The next presenter is Professor So Mint.
Hi, so this is the title of my talk, Examining Racial and Socioeconomic Disparities in Connection to Environmental Inequalities in the U.S. Southwest. So U.S. Southwest, which is known by the hottest and driest region in the U.S. And so there is some kind of climate challenge to sustainable development by human and natural systems. So in this context, how inequity shift among race and ethnicities, that is unknown, or at least not clear to us. So vulnerable groups, such as marginalized communities, race and ethnicities, especially minorities, occurring heat-related mortality or morbidity commonly present at a risk. And so basically that social and environmental inequities bring serious challenges, which is linked to public security and health issues. So the objectives, the first is to examine the widespread disparities of multidirectional factors of social, economy, environmental challenges among race and ethnicities. And so we would like to analyze dynamically how inequality changes among race and ethnicities, and evaluate the impact of climate change on environmental inequities in the past 20 years, basically from 2000 to 2020, and provide recommendations for development of sustainable and equitable policies. So the data we use US Census Block Group level for socioeconomic and environmental variables in that Census Block Group level administrative unit. And those states in the US Southwest, basically Arizona, New Mexico, California, Colorado, Kansas, Nevada, Oklahoma, Texas, and Utah. And we basically use 46 largest urban areas with at least 250,000 residents in each city. And we also use the Köppen climate zone maps to see these kinds of inequities exist in different climate zones. So here are the cities, basically like, all the biggest cities in the US Southwest. You can name LA or San Francisco or Houston or Austin, Phoenix, and so on. So here are the socioeconomic factors that we employ. So white, alone, and African Americans, American Indian, Asian alone, and Native Hawaiian, 2 or more races, Hispanic and non-Hispanic. And we create a people of color category, including all Hispanics and all populations that do not identify as white alone, and its complementary set that is non-Hispanic white. So ecological environmental database that we use land surface temperature, evapotranspiration, and evaporative stress index, which is basically the actual evapotranspiration divided by potential evapotranspiration, which is basically proxy to drought. So we collect all available Landsat images with cloud cover lower than 75% from the year 2000 to 2020 to examine land surface temperature and evapotranspiration. By the way, evapotranspiration can be considered proxy to consumptive water use. There are a total of 8,860 scenes that we use for Landsat 4, 5, 7, and 8 to fully cover the study years between 2000 and 2020. And we use a statistical mono window to compute land surface temperature. And we employed simplified surface energy balance model to generate evapotranspiration layers. And we also applied Mann-Kendall test to examine the time series of trend of changes of all these variables for land surface temperature and evapotranspiration. So here are some example images. I cannot put like 46 cities, but you can see land surface temperature on top left and evaporative stress index to the top right. And bottom left is land surface temperature slope value. Every pixel has land surface temperature changing, whether that particular pixel is experiencing increasing land surface temperature or decreasing land surface temperature. The same thing for evapotranspiration slope. I just basically use some kind of Los Angeles, Salt Lake City, Denver, Albuquerque, and so on. Some 9 cities that I showed here out of 46 cities. So here is sort of the diagram of flowchart and socioeconomy. We basically use median household income, poverty level, median household property values, per capita income, race and ethnicity. We have Hispanic versus non-Hispanic. We split into 2 categories. And then we also split in people of color and non-Hispanic white. For the environment, we use land surface temperature, evapotranspiration, and evaporative stress index, which is sort of like an indicator to drought. Evapotranspiration could be consumptive water use. Then we basically created land surface temperatures for 20 years, evapotranspiration, consumptive water use for 20 years, and layer stack all of them and see the trend of changes, whether they are increasing or decreasing at individual pixel level. Every pixel will have a slope value. And so methodology, we use global weighted mean. And then we also use interurban weighted mean. And then we consider all inequalities and examine the results. This is global weighted mean. If you take a look at median household income, then the positively correlated median household income for the mean global weighted mean is 79.88. So it is positive, but for African American, which is negative, and Native is negative, and Asian is positive, and Native Hawaiian is negative. For example, if you pick Asian, the higher the number of Asian people, the higher the median household income. It's the same thing for white, but it is the other way around for Black, Native American, and Native Hawaiian. There's people below poverty level, negative for white, positive for Black, positive for Native, negative for Asian, and negative, very low negative for Native Hawaiian. Land surface temperature negative, which is basically the higher the number of white people, the lower the land surface temperature. And it is positive for Native American, negative for Asian, and positive for Native Hawaiian. This is drought index. It varies quite a bit for positive for white, positive for Black, and negative for Native, and negative for Asian, and negative for Native Hawaiian. So evapotranspiration is also sort of like negative for all of them except Black. For the land surface temperature, negative for white and Black, but this trend is not very clear at this point because we basically use a global weighted one. And it's the same thing for evapotranspiration, water, consumptive water use. And so let me move on to global weighted means of social environmental metrics by contrary groups that you can take a look at. That Hispanic and non-Hispanic median household income basically is negative, and which is actually positive for non-Hispanic, and per capita income negative, which is positive here. So if you take a look at people below poverty level, which is positive for Hispanic, the higher the number of Hispanic people, the higher the people under poverty, which is the other way around for non-Hispanic. Let me pick another one, like daytime land surface temperature, positive for Hispanic, negative for non-Hispanic. So the higher the non-Hispanic people, the lower the land surface temperature. And here, drought condition is also negative for Hispanic and then positive for non-Hispanic, which basically means the higher the Hispanic people, the lower the evaporative stress index, which basically means a higher drought condition. And sand slope, land surface temperature is positive sand slope with Hispanic. The higher the Hispanic, the higher the slope condition, the rate of change of land surface temperatures are increasing, which is negative for the other one. And then if you take a look at people of color versus non-Hispanic white, all of them are exactly the same, like those from Hispanic to non-Hispanic. But you can see all the negative trend, positive trend, and everything is, the trend and relationship are consistently the same. So I'm not going to go through everything again. So here, statistical difference using interurban weighted means among races and ethnicities across major U.S. Southwest cities. We use a Wilkinson test, intercity 46 urban cities. Basically, we consider each and every city as particular intercity kind of differences. So if you take a look at Hispanic versus non-Hispanic, Hispanic is minus 15.05. That's the difference, statistically significant. So basically, Hispanic median household income is this much lower than non-Hispanic, and people of color, the same thing, the negative, which is people of color and Hispanic, non-Hispanic white is 14.14 lower, and per capita income is also negative for both of them, and people below poverty level positive for both of them. And this is basically property value, which is also negative. Hispanic property values are 77.31 lower than non-Hispanic. The same thing for people of color, 72.38 lower than non-Hispanic white. Evaporative stress index, drought is negatively correlated, negative That means that, Hispanic has a lower ESI value, which is basically higher drought condition. The same thing for people of color. And evapotranspiration water use is also negative 2.83 for Hispanic in comparison to non-Hispanic. Land surface temperature slope this much plus positive. So the trend of land surface temperature in Hispanic is higher than non-Hispanic. The same thing for this category, people of color, non-Hispanic white. And evapotranspiration sand slope is negative. That means Hispanic areas have lower consumptive water use than non-Hispanic. And it's the same thing for people of color. So the time series of land surface temperature and ETA, we try to demonstrate a different way. If you take a look at the top two, on the left is Hispanic versus non-Hispanic. On the right is people of color versus non-Hispanic white. You can see 75th percentile is the highest. So basically, that higher kind of Hispanic have the highest land surface temperature from 2000 to 2020. The same thing for people of color. Green is 75th percentile, higher than others. If you take a look at evapotranspiration, actual evapotranspiration, it's the other way around. Water use for 75th percentile, that is the lowest, and 25th percentile is the highest. So that's the differences. Then we also did the statistical differences in inter-city weighted means among contrary groups. So basically, Hispanic versus non-Hispanic, we basically use a Wisconsin test for arid region and temperate and cold region separately. If you take a look at data in land surface temperature, regardless of whether it is arid or temperate regions, and whether it is Hispanic versus non-Hispanic or people of color versus non-Hispanic white, all of them are positively correlated. The higher the number of Hispanic in comparison to non-Hispanic, land surface temperatures get higher. That is true for arid and temperate. That is also true for people of color versus non-Hispanic. Then drought condition is negative for all instead, regardless of which climate regions where they live. And basically negative Hispanic in comparison to non-Hispanic is high, then evaporative stress index is low. That means the drought condition is high for all four of them. And if you take a look at consumptive water use, negative as well for all, except this particular temperate region people of color versus non-Hispanic white. But these three, all of them are negatively correlated. The higher the Hispanic or the higher the people of color, the lower the consumptive water use. It is also true for sand slope of positive, 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 and positive, and negative for all of them for consumptive water use. That is basically something that we found out that all of them are basically consistent. So here, mean values of land surface, we tried to demonstrate it in a different way. And you can see that the x-axis is from 2000 to 2020. The first one is Hispanic versus non-Hispanic. And the second is people of color versus non-Hispanic white. So if you take a look at the first block, this particular one is arid region. This is temperate region. So temperate areas that you can see the trend a little bit here. So land surface temperature, like I mentioned earlier, the 75th percentile is the highest. And you can see some kind of trend. But for the temperate region, you don't see a clear trend. And this is Hispanic versus non-Hispanic. This is people of color versus non-Hispanic white. And this is Hispanic versus non-Hispanic. This is people of color versus non-Hispanic. You can see that water use does not show a trend or constant kind of upward trajectory or anything like that. But for the temperate region, water use, it is going down for those both categories. it is like this. For land surface temperature, it is going up. For water usage, it's going down. That is true for arid region for Hispanic and people of color. But for temperate region, evapotranspiration or consumptive water use is declining over time. That is true for both Hispanic and people of color. So here we have LST and ETA differences between 2000 and 2020. You can see that the red color dots represent land surface temperature differences in arid region, and gray color dots is basically for the temperate region. But everything else is blue color. But you can see somewhat the trends, upward trends for LST differences in arid region, and in the temperate region, which is a somewhat downward kind of trend that we observe. And but this particular one, the same thing for land surface temperature differences, which is also for people of color. This is for Hispanic versus non-Hispanic, that the land surface temperature trend in arid region is going up and up from 2000 to 2024. And it was not very clear for the people in temperate region. And you can see for evapotranspiration for Hispanic versus non-Hispanic from 2000 to 2020, the trend is basically going down in general. And so the water use or water availability or moisture in their neighborhoods sort of like showing the declining trend between 2000 and 2020. You can see all of them are negative for all climate regions. And then this is basically for orange color is for arid region, gray color is for temperate region. Blue represents everything else. But here is also somewhat downward trend in connection to people of color and non-Hispanic white between 2000 and 2020. And so we basically put it up. I think I finished it just a little bit before. So this is the last slide that we basically put all our data that, including 8,850 satellite image data for the entire United States, Southwest region of the United States, and all cities are there. And we uploaded and made it available for public use. And we published it quite early, but this paper just recently came out. We published it in Environmental Science and Technology. And so here is my email. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. So thank you all for your attention.
Thank you all for your presentations. We will now start with question and answer session. I would kindly ask the speakers to read the question addressed to them and provide their answers. Dear Professor Wang, for you is the first question. Could you please read it and provide your answer?
Sure. I think I received two questions, and the first two are repetitive. I'll just repeat the edited version. Question for Chen Hao: What opportunities creating modeling resolution problems of climate change in urban areas for reduction poverty and social inequality in the cities and urban areas? Thanks. So that's actually a great question. So think about most widely used global climate models and the Earth system models in IPCC reports. The spatial resolution has improved over time, of course, from 1 to 2 degree, which is about 100 to 200 kilometer, and to a much finer resolution to say 50 kilometer nowadays, but some regional climate models now can even achieve, say, 10 kilometer or even finer resolution. But this is far from enough if you ever want to use the model outputs directly to address a poverty issue or social inequality. For example, in the US, we usually look at disparities at census tract level, or even finer level, which is much, much finer than 1 kilometer. So there is definitely a strong need for very high resolution modeling and also remote sensing products, of course. And the bright side is that now we have many LiDAR-based geometry data set available to help us build these so-called ultra-fine resolution models we defined earlier this year, which is something researchers have never thought of when they first developed climate models. And the second question I received is how can integrate the renewable energy to modeling the urban, for example, the solar energy forecasting and exploitation in cities? Yeah, so for this question, I think this is related to one of the slides where I show the limitations or areas we should explore in future urban development. So I was actually talking about representing different renewable energy systems in cities. For example, the so-called building integrated photovoltaics, solar panels on our rooftop, wind energy, etc., etc. But of course, this is also including solar energy forecast because the three-dimensional urban structure, the air pollution emission and anthropogenic heat emission, all these unique features in cities are creating very unique urban climates that will also change the patterns of cloud precipitation and eventually solar radiation. And that's definitely something we need to consider in model development in the future. And I think that's all questions for me.
Yes, thank you, Professor Wang. We also have a question for Professor Javier. Dear Professor, could you please read those questions and provide your answer? Professor Javier, are you with us? Professor Javier, it seems we lost him. Professor Javier?
He could have stepped out of his office for a restroom or anything.
Yeah, we can move on.
Yes, yes. Professor Dr. Samuel, we will send you Professor Javier answer via email if he does not show up soon. I would like to thank you, dear all. I would like to thank you for participating in the webinar, MDPI World Cities Day 2025, Session 2. I hope you all enjoyed. During the following days, we will edit recording of the webinar and we will make it available to everyone. I would like to remind you that next session start on the same link at 4 p.m. Central European time zone. Thank you all once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
So again, thank you, everyone. Welcome to the MDPI World Sites Cities Day 2025. This is session number 2. I'm Anita Mahmutovic from MDPI, and I'm really delighted to be your host for the today webinar. So let me just share my screen, please, so that I can present you the today information about the webinar. So basically, first of all, I will use also opportunity to tell you something more about the MDPI and to give you some short introduction of our company. MDPI is a pioneer in scholarly open access publishing. MDPI also has supported academic community since is in Basel, Switzerland, and also we have a mission to foster open scientific exchange in all forms across all disciplines. Our 491 diverse and open access journals, including also 482 peer-reviewed journals with 9 conferences journals, we are supported by more than 115,000 academics experts who share our mission, values, and also commitments to providing high-quality service to our authors. With next one, I would like also to tell you more about the journals that has been organized with this with the collaboration. So basically, This webinar has involved the organization of the journals Construction Materials, Vehicles, Smart Cities, Automation, Applied Science, Climate, Remote Sensing, Atmosphere Meteorology, and the World. All of these journals are international, peer-reviewed, and also open access, published by MDPI. Then here is the program for today's webinar. So basically, and unfortunately, must to say, today we have just one speaker, that is Professor Arkavind from Malaysia. So he will have 20 minutes to present his presentation. After that, we will have Q&A session for 20 minutes. Any question that you might have for him, you can leave in Q&A section in the below of the desktop, and after he finished his presentation, he would be happy to reply to all your questions. So yeah, unfortunately, the other speakers were not able to join us due to health issues they had faced this morning. And yeah, there are also some of the relevant special issues for this topic. So basically, I would like also to invite you that you can submit maybe some of your potential are closely aligned with today's topic. So we really encourage all the researchers here to consider submitting their work within those 3 special issues. So yeah, here is how it looks, that Q&A chat box where you are welcome to post all of your questions. So yeah, just shortly here to mention the affiliation of our speaker. He is coming from School of Engineering, Taylor University from Malaysia. So Professor Wainglitem, the floor is yours. I will stop sharing my screen now, and you may feel free to share your screen and start the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for MDPI to give an opportunity for us to share of what we do as a practice in Taylor's University. So we call this one as a purpose-led learning. We started this project somewhere in 2022 after the COVID strike, that we started to see that a big transition is happening in the educational domain. So that's where we decided to get away from the conventional way of teaching learning that is happening in the classrooms. And we want to get a meaning and a purpose of our teaching learning pedagogy that happens in the university, and how does it impact that one in the as an outcome for the community in the whole. So the community means like it can be an industry, it can be an individual, or it can be a government, or it can be a society. So in order to do that one, we try to bring in the Sustainable Development Goals as our framework. Then we try to bring it as some sort of operational component. We call this as an impact lab. We created about 11 impact labs that is targeting for the 17 SDG goals. For example, like education for all, that is talking about how education can be able to be given to even to the last person in the world. Likewise, we also have several other labs that is targeting for different type of impact labs with a purpose mission to see that the impact can be achieved in a short term or a medium term or in long term in some of the projects we do. So the model is very simple and easy. Like we try to bring in a triangulation of what impact we want to create and convert that impact into a project. And then we align that project with the curriculum we are running in the university as an academic, and how this curriculum component can create a value proposition, and that can directly imply to that of the beneficiary. So that's how the
Professor
model. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just I'm not sure if you're moving your slides,
No,
because
not it.
you're still the first one.
Not it. Still in the first one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So sorry. Okay, sorry. Please
Yeah.
continue. Okay.
Yeah. So we see this as a purpose-led that can create impact at the output. We call it a purpose-led strategy. We started this journey in 2022, and what we are doing after 2 to 3 years of time period is like we are trying to reap some of the outcomes that can see some tangibles in impacting the society at bigger proportion. And most of our projects are, in a way, it's a successful and it's been recognized both nationally and also internationally. So today's session, I just want to share with you of what practices we did or how we strategize that one in a purpose learning. And I will share with you 2 projects, one on campus, another is an off campus, how we designed that curriculum, then how we executed the curriculum component as a project, and how does this project impact to the society at large. So the title of today's presentation is Harvesting the Value of Water, where we try to address this SDG 6 as a component that can, how to make this SDG 6 component to be mature, right? And it is able to create a direct value for water in terms of sustainable farming. Both on campus and also off campus. My name is Aravind, and you can call me Aravind, it's more easier. I'm from Taylor's University, Malaysia. Yeah, so let's move on. Okay, so to make this one to be alignment, the first thing is like we need to make sure that it is aligned well within the boundary of, as I mentioned, like as an university, our prime objective is to come up with a different type of pedagogy approach there. And of course, this one needs to be supported by the management or the governance who is actually running the entire shows. The governance include both the employer and also the professional body that is actually endorsing the pedagogical delivery. Now, of course, the direct impact is on the community and the societal outcome. So what we try to link these 3 is to align with that of the SDG. Again, in terms of ESD, we want to make sure that the projects we do, the outcomes we want to deliver, it's something that is directly impacting the environmental. It creates a social value. At the same time, it is also something which is affordable, I could say that, or it can be said that it can improve the economic status of the beneficiary at the end point. So of course, throughout all this process, we do mention ESG as a key enabler for the entire SDG component there. So that's how we try to plan in terms of making a triangulation to say that the university being the prime partner, the beneficiary is the community, and we also go with partners who can bring our ideas, our project outcomes into the society. Like for example, NGOs play a major role in bringing our projects to our community, particularly when we talk about medical sciences and also engineering applications. We need somebody at the ground level who can execute the project very well. Okay, so that's why you can see from the screen, it's the left side, we started this the Impact Lab, which I mentioned. So I was the founding director for one of the Impact Lab, which is called Clean Technology Impact Lab. So this lab is actually addressing to the SDG goals of 6 and 7. 6 is for water related issues, and 7 is addressing the issues related with energy. Of course, to execute the entire idea of the projects across the different scenario, we need to have a framework. So we designed this framework, what we call as an impact framework, because at the end, we want to measure how actually this execution of the project individually gives an outcome that can relate to the SDG indicator. And cumulatively, we want to collect from the lab perspective of in a particular year, how much of impact we have created for each of the sub-indicators of this SDG. So that's why we try to measure our outcome using this 6th component, IMPACT. So innovation, how much of innovation happens during the process, what type of peoples we bring into the projects, like what type of action projects we have created, what values we co-create in the process, during the process, and how the transformation is happening in terms of economical values or societal impact. So what I'm sharing today is the 5 key projects. Of course, we have done many projects with the past 2 years, but I just pick these 5 projects as something which is very close to our operational part. That means I can say it's a successful outcome there. So Bison, for example, is a project where we try to create a urban form within the Taylor's campus. Because at Taylor's we have the hospitality and tourism course where we have our students running their own hotels, right? We have about 3 hotels inside the campus. And the feeder for the hotel, like for example, lettuce, some sort of crops. We want to make sure that we grow that one in our living lab model in Taylor's University, and the outcome of this one is straight away linked back to the hotel. So in the process, the farm which is able to grow the crops is maintained and designed developed by the student, and the outcome of this farm, right, that is the crops and other thing is used to buy the students in the kitchen from the hospitality tourism courses so it becomes like a circular economy type, like where we try to we grow ourselves and we use that one for the beneficiary for the people there. Green Wall is another project where we have a beautiful lake in the campus. So we want to make sure that the lake lake water is getting purified then and there. We also have a lot of hand wash water that is left out. Usually these waters are generally is of no use there. We use a bioremediation process. We build our own green wall structure there, where we try to take this input water as a grey water, and we try to convert that one using the plant growth. Of course, it is using this drip irrigation method, where we try to reduce the toxic content of this water level, and the output of this after you do the remediation, this is used for secondary purposes like gardening the plants and other purposes. So this is a second project which we call as a green wall project. EcoPulse again is a project where we try to bring the ideas and the solutions we develop inside the campus that is addressing the challenges of, for example, how to harvest the rainwater, how to make better filtration systems using the naturally available systems there. So we use our students to develop these solutions in the laboratory. Then we bring this one as a product to the community and ask them to adopt this type of products over there. But it's all we use the approach of fragile innovation concept, where we try to reduce the cost by trying to reuse the material that is of no use from the bigger component. That's what we try to do in EcoPulse part. Trapeze is basically as I mentioned, like we have a kitchen there, Taylor's kitchen there. The output of the kitchen is usually having higher coagulant, which is very oily because we use a lot of oils for the cooking there. Of course, we can't discard this oil straight away, so we need to make sure that it is broken into a better value so that it doesn't cause much impact for the environment. So again, we use bio-based materials to split this coagulant into subparticles so that it can be discarded in a more safer way. So Carbon Light is another project where we try to straight away link with the industry, where we try to come up with an energy efficient devices, energy efficiency component. For example, we develop an aircon, which is an intelligent type of aircon for that can save larger amount of we reduce about 30% of this energy consumption by the aircon. As you know, that aircon is the most biggest culprit, right, in your whole energy transition part here. So we partner with Daikin, for example, is a company that is partnering with us. We develop the idea through our students, then we give this the idea as a concept, then we develop as a prototype, then we bring this prototype and partner with this company, with the industry, and now our idea is now in China. It's in the next stage of coming up with next stage of work, next evolution of your aircon over there. So these are some of the key projects we have done in the past 2 years of period there. Of course, as I mentioned, our framework is our intention is very clear with the purpose. We want to make sure that there's a purpose in whatever we do. Even a simple assignment in one of the module, it has an outcome that can create some value proposition for some people at the end point. That's what we try to create a value, because usually what we see during our earlier times, like we offer projects, we offer assignments, we offer many things to do, but at the end it ends up with just like a paper that is ending up with no value. So that's why we try to make it to be a purpose-driven approach using this framework. So I don't want to go through this one. I think later Anita can share the slide with the participants over there. So this is an approach we try to do, and we clearly map this one with what type of characteristics we want to have, and who are the people who are involved in the entire process, and what is the impact we want to create. For example, a certain project doesn't mean that it has to have all these 6 components in place. Some projects will have only innovation with some partnership and transformation. Some project may have some sort of application of the project. That means we just bring that idea to apply in the community, which demands a mobilization and a partnership over that. Okay, so as you can see here, these are the projects which I just presented, that we have about out of these 5, for example, you have a greater proportion of on-campus, because on-campus is generally easy for us to have a control in the sense like we have considering the number of students we have in a module and the operational challenges. Usually we started in 2023 as most of the projects are on campus. In 2024, we moved back into many projects outside our campuses there, which is furthering up in the different shape in the next in 2025 and 2026. So I will share with you 2 projects. One is on off-campus, another is on campus. This is an off-campus project. Call this as an equitable project. Again, as I mentioned, we identify the challenge, then we try to bring that challenge into the curriculum. Then we try to see that which modules can be mapped. For example, in this case, we map engineering students and architecture students, because the purpose of this project is to build a rainwater harvesting system for the villages, so that they can use this water to grow their own farms, so that they can make a living out of it. So of course, we also thought of an additional value to see that if there is because rainwater is seasonal, we want to see that if there is a possibility for us to come up with a centralized source of water resource. Of course, the rainwater harvest becomes a decentralized. That means each house may have a rainwater harvesting system. The capacity may be very, very limited over there. So that's why we tried to triangulate again. We come up with we look at around, and we found there is a stream next to the villages. We try to bring the water. Then we try to pull that one to the centralized mechanism to see that it makes to have a gravity water. You can see from the second slide here, the gravity water and the rainwater harvest. These are the sources of the water, where we try to see the potential of the water can be used for application for the villages who doesn't have access to water. So of course, clean water is another step there, but at least the first step is to have them access for water. So we bring this together. One is a decentralized way, another is centralized way. The gravity water is a centralized approach. Rainwater harvesting is a decentralized approach. So that means in the village, a particular house will have both rainwater harvesting, and if they want much water, then they go for the gravity source, which we bring the water from the river source. Then we store that one in a centralized big tanks, so that the villages can go and use here. So the entire thing is designed by our students. Then in the process, we also give the students, we bring this one into the subjects. Like for example, rainwater harvesting, we ask the students to come up with what type of devices they can develop for having a rainwater harvesting system using fragile innovation concept. Fragile innovation is something like we try to reuse the materials what we can from the equipments which is already losing its aging part here. Of course, all this one needs money, so that's why we went for the funder to get for money. We seek money from the funder. Petronas is our funder for the entire project. The project spanned for about 2 years of time period, and we successfully developed the solutions for the villages there. And I would say that it actually improves the villages livelihood by about 30% of income within the span of 6 to 8 months of time period of the complete execution of the project there. So these are some of the examples which you can see from here, how the students are able to go through this different process in terms of when they pitch the idea. We also invite the industry people to come and give their feedback. And during the process, the students also gain this type of engagement from the industry, getting their first-hand information of the feedback and what they have to improvise before they want to come up with the end product, right? End product and that can create value for in this case is for the villages. So this is on-site where we bring the students and also our team members over there. We spend some ample hours of time period there to come with the ideation process. Then we come up with the brainstorming. We went to design the system, then see the mechanical integrity because it's involving straight away the end user. Of course, we want to have some sort of integrity in terms of operational. So we bring partners like, for example, Malaysian Green Building Index people into the project and ask them to come and validate whether our design is on par with the operational condition, or whether it is good enough for the people to use the water. Because water is another issue with the water is like the consumption of the water might create some sort of health problems at the later part. So we are very particular to tell the villagers not to use for consumption. We encourage them to use for the secondary type of application. But still, we want to make sure that the water that is of they are harvesting is having a proper filtration systems, proper remediation is done before it is put into the tank over there. So we measure the pH content, what is the turbidity level, whether it's safe for consumption or not. Of course, we employ the third party to come into the picture to validate the entire process over there. So we have done this execution of starting the project in 2025. We have completed the entire project where we addressed these SDG goals from 1, 2, 3, 6, 8, and 17. Now we are moving to the second phase where we are we are adopting the same village. And now we are going forward to see that how we can make a difference in the next level in terms of, because during the process of doing this entire project, we also find there is an opportunity for us to create value proposition for the education for their kids, villages kids around there. There is a possibility for us to give an awareness in terms of the health issues. Now we are in the process of seeking funding, coming up with a blueprint before we want to start to execute the project in 2026 and 2027. So as a whole, like we see that the purpose of the first phase is to cater for the economic point of view. The second phase is about the health point of view. So our plan for example, 6 or 7 years of time period is to say that we want to create a living lab model outside the campus, and we want to bring this model and share with the other people and encourage them to have a simple approach like this one, and they can make a lot of difference in the near future for everyone. So this is our report, and of course we have been in the limelight for quite some times. Like we are the finalist for the IET Global Award this year. We are also participating in the QS Reimagine Award as a finalist for 2 of our projects. We are also finalist for the education innovation in Singapore in November again. So we have about 28 articles in online you can read. We also get some sort of teaching learning award. Okay, the point here is like we try to see the tangible in terms of the outcome is getting, the beneficiary is getting the impact. At the same time, we also want to make sure that whoever is involved in the project is getting some sort of share from their project. For example, as an academic, we need to have publication. So we just go to see that how to convert the entire journey into some sort of like a documentation process that can serve as some sort of a body of knowledge where people can go and refer it and can adopt that one into their in their company. So we also want to make sure that it is also have some sort of teaching learning impact in the teaching learning community, where we try to share this type of ideas in teaching learning engagements, in the conferences, in the innovation competitions, and share with them like how we try to integrate learning has an impact for the society. Of course, the recognition is another part, but our intention is much towards to have a model that can create value for our fellow peers around the world. Okay, the second project which I want to share with you, I think I have about another 3-4 slides. I'm taking a little bit time is because like the other speakers are not. I am taking the time to. I think Anita don't mind in allowing me. Yeah. Okay, yeah. The second project which we try to I try to share with you is the in-house project where we call this as a by sun. What we try to do is we have an urban farm that is similar to the greenhouse farm we can see from anywhere around the globe, right? But the biggest challenge for greenhouse type is the investments you make on this type of system. And our Stylus University is located in a city premises, so it doesn't create a much opportunity for us to have in terms of the land area. So we don't have a cultivational type of land area there. So what we have is a tarmac type of land where we are not able to harvest the plant of what we wanted to do. So that's why we try to adopt this principle of agri-photovoltaic. It's very common thing which is done by other people around the globe. But what we try to do is instead of using the shading of the solar cells, we try to use a bifacial solar cell. The bifacial solar cell in the sense like it will take, of course, it's similar to that of any solar cell. It will generate electricity from the top surface of the solar cell, but at the bottom surface, it's still a translucent, I can say, where it is allowing a certain percentage of light that can go inside this solar panel. So at the bottom, we grow the plants, which of that type of temperature that can handle. So what we try to do is we try to move away from the controlled way of controlled environment ground plant into an uncontrolled plant growth, so that you can reduce the cost involved in developing a greenhouse model and recreate whatever the outcomes what you can get through a greenhouse approach using this bifacial system here. Of course, everybody know that when you put a panel, it's like occupying the space, and space is money. So we try to see that how to optimize the space. At the same time, we don't want to compromise it. So this model will generate electricity using the conventional solar. Then we use that energy to run the plant. Plus at the top, on top, it is also able to harvest the plant, harvest the, like for example, in this case, pak choy. Pak choy is the one what you're seeing in this picture there. So which is grown within 3 months of time per year, which actually serves as an feeder for our tailor's kitchen, where our students again use this type of pak chai for serving as a like a salad, in the salad for the people who are in there. Okay. So of course, the important part in this type of plant growth is the mortality rate, right? How much of plant can survive against this extreme weather? So again, we have proven it like it is lesser in terms of the controlled type of environment. This type of uncontrolled can still survive at the tarmac surface is the one that is actually generating a lot of heat. So if a plant can survive in this type of tarmac, then it can survive in even the cement and other type of surfaces over there. So now we are in the process of, we have done this one a couple of times. We harvested and we sold each packet, for example, is about 4 ringgit. I'm not sure how much to convert, but in other currency, but it's about 4 ringgit. So which is we have done for 3 or 4 times already. Now we are in the process of trying out with a different type of crops. That means the crops that is more expensive, that is grown in a controlled environment. Hopefully we'll be successful at some point of time. So in this case, what we try to do is we try to bring some innovation value. Of course, this is involving plants, crops, that means you need to have people coming from a background of biosciences. We also bring people from business because it needs to, commercialize it, have a commercialized edge there. So we bring students from business, we bring students from biosciences, we bring students from engineering together. And I know meaning that each of these students belongs to one of the modules, and each module will have some component of assessment that is mapped with the entire project at the end. So this is one you can see on the middle picture is the panel, the solar panel there, which is a bifacial part here. And then this is the growth on the left side. On the corner, you can see is a plant, the first harvest. And of course, we send this idea to international arena, but then we also promote our students to go and experience of firsthand in terms of international competition to see that how they can be how the value of this project can be from the students' point of view, so that we want to have this type of the positive thinking process in the students to say that like whatever they do in the university, they can create an impact while they are as a student, rather than thinking like when I go to industry, I will start to create value. Okay, we try to remodel. This is a remodel of what we try to do from the urban form. On the right side, you see is the urban form. So we have concluded the project in 2025. Now when we are doing the project, again, we find an opportunity to see that as you can see the exterior, it has fans. The fans is actually free revolving and it's a free energy. So during the process of the execution, we found that it's an opportunity for us to harness this rotational energy. So now our student is now building a wind turbine, which can be able to put at the exhaust of this fan. As the fan sucks the inside air and throw to the outside, in the process, it will be able to rotate the turbine, and the turbine will be able to generate electricity. So this project is currently ongoing. So what we try to see is like when we are doing a project, we try to see that whether there is an opportunity for us to see that any other problems or any other optimization we can do within the setup over there. Then we bring back again as another project, another module. Then we map it to the students, then ask the students to develop the solution. Then we bring the solutions to the beneficiary and want to trust it back. So actually, this actually helps you to understand like we are not in terms of having a project done, then we stopping, but it becomes like a sustainable over the period of time. And every time when we do the project, it is not the same person that is going to, continue the project. Rather, it's going to be like, so when I do the crop project, the bioscience project was done by the bioscience people. The energy project is done by my colleague from energy field. The environmental aspect is done by the environmental people. So it doesn't give one dimensional, but it gives a multidimensional for people to come in over there. And of course, it's very difficult for us to convince people when they are in the boardroom, when they are in the project execution phase. But during the process, we start to learn a lot of things from each other. So we started to see the value of the cross-disciplinary and multidisciplinary values that can bring to the project. So we moved, for example, 40 people getting impacted in 2023. Now we have almost 4 times of impact we created in 2024. So in terms of the other aspects, also we are moving forward in very well. I believe it is also an opportunity to see like in 6 or 7 years of time period when you try to accumulate all these projects together, and it can become a documentation for the entire university, and it can become a model for people to see that how the SDG can be manifested. Because as of today, we have SDG goals, but the measuring component and the tangible outcomes, how it is going to be mapped and measured is always based on how you perceive. There is indicators, but indicators is not very it's very subjective. So that's why we try to create this model over the period of time. At the end, for example, 5 years or 6 years of time, we want to come up with each project is contributing how much of SDG impact, and at the end we want to measure like how much of beneficiary is getting from here. More than this type of academic and the business values around there, it's always beautiful to see that the smiles when we see the villages the first time they are seeing the water. So that actually makes people's to to have a feeling that you have lived to the purpose of what we are. Thank you very much for the opportunity for MDPI. I'm looking forward to answer any questions if you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Aravind. Thank you so much for your insightful presentation. And also thank you everyone who in the audience who also participated in this webinar. Let me check Q&A box if we have any question. No. I will once more time invite attendees. If you have any question, please feel free to share in Q&A box so that Professor Aravind can help and reply to your questions if you might have any. So let's wait like approximately 1 minute maybe in case that someone wants to share something with us. Seems like no. Seems like no. So thank you, Professor Aravind, again. On behalf of MDPI and also of the organizing journals of this webinar, I would like to thank you again once more time for joining us and also for celebrating this World Cities Day 2025. I wish you all a wonderful day and wonderful weekend ahead of us, and we look forward to seeing you again in some of next of our webinars. If you have any questions, you may feel free also to contact us on our email addresses of our journals. And thank you so much again. Wish you a nice day.